She isn't coming. She never was. I'm doing you a favor." The man in the gray suit tore the envelope in half while a dying woman reached for it with both hands. "Give it back, Wesley." Margaret Collins was 68-90 pounds 4 weeks from the end. "Give it back, that's for my daughter." "Your daughter forgot you exist." He dropped both halves on the floor and turned his back on her. Somebody in this family had to be honest. And a hospice volunteer named Ethan Walker, standing frozen in the doorway with 2 cups of tea, watched a man throw away the last thing a dying mother had left to say. Then he set the tea down and got on his knees to pick up the pieces. Before we go on, if stories like this one matter to you, please subscribe to the channel and stay with me all the way to the end, because what happens in the last part is not what anyone expected, least of all Ethan. And do me one small favor, leave a comment telling me what city you are watching from tonight. I want to see how far Margaret's letter has traveled. Now let me take you back 6 weeks to the night this whole thing started. Ethan Walker was 34 years old, and he taught American history to teenagers at a public high school in southeast Portland, Oregon. He was good at it. He was not good at Sundays. Sundays were the day his father died 11 years earlier in a hospital room on the 3rd floor of a building that had since been torn down and replaced with condominiums. Ethan had been driving back from a conference in Boise. He had stopped for gas. He had stopped for a sandwich. He had taken a phone call from a colleague about a scheduling conflict, and he had let that phone call run 17 minutes. He arrived 40 minutes after his father stopped breathing. Nobody blamed him. That was the part he could never explain to anyone, not his mother, not his sister, not the 2 women he had dated seriously since. Nobody blamed him, and that was precisely why it never went away. There was no punishment to accept, no sentence to serve. There was only a locked door in his chest with a man behind it who had died alone while his son ordered a turkey sandwich. So Ethan started volunteering. Cedar Hollow Hospice sat on a quiet street on the east side of the river, a low brick building with a garden that flooded every February. Ethan came on Thursday evenings and Sunday afternoons. He sat with people. That was the entire job description. He read out loud, he held hands, he listened to men in their 80s tell the same war story 4 times in an hour, and he never once corrected them. The staff loved him because he showed up. Volunteers came in waves, especially around the holidays, all of them full of good intentions, and most of them lasted 3 weeks. Ethan had lasted 2 years. Rosa Delgado, the night charge nurse, was the one who put him in room 14. "I've got someone for you," she said that first rainy Thursday in November. "Okay. I'm going to be honest with you first. That's never a good opening." "She's run off 4 volunteers," Rosa said. "One of them cried in the parking lot." Ethan laughed before he could stop himself. "What's her name?" "Margaret Collins, 68, terminal pancreatic, and she knows exactly how much time she has because she made the doctor say the number out loud in front of her." "Family." Rosa's face did something complicated. "There's a nephew," she said. "He comes with paperwork." Ethan waited for the rest of it. Rosa didn't give him the rest of it. "Just go say hello," she said. Room 14 was at the end of the West Hall, and Margaret Collins was sitting up in bed with reading glasses on the end of her nose and a newspaper folded into a tight rectangle in her lap. She had short white hair that she clearly still combed herself. She did not look up when he knocked. "I don't want a chaplain," she said. "I'm not a chaplain. I don't want a therapist. I'm a history teacher." That got her to look. She studied him over the glasses for a long moment, the way a woman studies a used car. "Whose history? American mostly. Reconstruction through the Cold War." "Then you spend your whole life explaining to children why people who should have known better did terrible things anyway." "That's the job," Ethan said. Margaret took the glasses off. "Sit down then. But if you tell me you're sorry about my diagnosis, you can leave. Everybody in this building is sorry. Sorry is free." He sat down. He didn't say he was sorry. They talked for 40 minutes about the Marshall Plan of all things, because it was in her newspaper, and because Margaret Collins had opinions about it. She had been a legal secretary for 31 years at a firm downtown. She had read more than most of the attorneys. She corrected Ethan twice, and she was right both times, and she enjoyed it enormously. Then at 7:15, without any warning at all, she said, "You may go now." "I have until 8. I said you may go. Did I say something wrong?" "You said everything right," Margaret said. "That's worse. Go home, Mr. Walker." He went home. He came back Sunday. She pretended to be surprised. She was terrible at pretending. "You again. Me again. They pay you extra for the difficult ones. They don't pay me at all. Then you're a fool, Margaret said, and moved the newspaper so he had somewhere to put down the paper cup of tea he had brought her without asking. That was how the first 2 weeks went. Thursday and Sunday. History and newspapers, and one running argument about whether Truman was a great man or a lucky one. Margaret liked to win. Ethan let her win about half the time, and she caught him doing it in the second week. Don't do that. Do what? Fold like a lawn chair because I'm dying. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. I've had 68 years of people being careful with me, and I'd like to spend my last ones being told the truth. All right, Ethan said. You're wrong about Truman. I am not. You are, and you know you are, because you changed the subject twice. Margaret Collins looked at him for 3 full seconds, and then she laughed, and the laugh turned into a cough, and the cough went on longer than either of them wanted it to, and when it was over she was pale, and her hands were shaking, and she said, "Don't call the nurse." I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. I was, he admitted. Don't. She'll bring the mask, and I'll fall asleep, and I'll lose the rest of the evening. I don't have that many evenings to be spending them unconscious. He sat back down. In the third week he noticed the journal. It was old brown leather, the cover gone soft, a rubber band holding it shut because the binding had given up. It lived under her pillow. She never opened it in front of him, but twice he caught her with her hand under the pillow, not reaching for it, just resting her palm on it, the way people touch a dog that's sleeping. He didn't ask. That was the rule he had made for himself 2 years earlier on his first night at Cedar Hollow. You don't ask. You wait, and if they want you inside, they open the door themselves. The nephew opened it for him instead. It was a Thursday. Ethan was in the hallway with 2 cups of tea when he heard a man's voice through the door of room 14, and the voice had that particular tone that people use when they have already decided they are being generous. You're not thinking clearly. That's not an insult. It's a medical fact. My mind is fine. Your mind is on morphine. I am on nothing at all today, Wesley, precisely because I knew you were coming. Ethan stopped walking. The house needs to be handled, the man said. You can't sell it from a bed. You certainly can't leave it in limbo. Do you know what the taxes look like on a property that sits in probate for 2 years? Do you know what it does to a family? What family? There was a pause. That's not fair, Wesley said. You said family. I'm asking which one, because I've been in this building 11 weeks, and you have visited me 6 times, and every single time you brought a folder. I bring the folder because nobody else will. You bring the folder because you want the house. I want you not to leave a mess, Wesley said, and his voice went cold in a way that made Ethan's stomach turn over. There's a difference. And frankly, Aunt Margaret, somebody has to be an adult here because your daughter certainly isn't going to be. The silence after that was long. Get out, Margaret said quietly. Margaret, get out of my room. Ethan stepped back from the door and made himself very interested in the water fountain, and a moment later a man in his 40s came out, gray suit, good shoes, a leather folder under his arm, and he glanced at Ethan, the way you glance at a piece of furniture that's slightly in the way. Ethan waited 5 minutes before he went in. Margaret was staring at the ceiling. You heard, she said. I heard some. You heard all of it. You have an honest face, and it's very inconvenient. He set the tea down. You have a daughter, Ethan said, and Margaret Collins, who had argued with him about Truman for 2 weeks and had never once flinched at the word, death closed her eyes like he had put a light in them. I did, she said. Did. Have you ever done something so stupid, so slowly, over so many years that by the time you understood it, you couldn't even point to the day you did it? Yes, Ethan said. I have. She opened her eyes. You're too young to mean that. My father died on a Sunday in a hospital on Burnside, and I got there 40 minutes late because I stopped to eat. He had never said that to a single person in 11 years. He didn't know why he said it to a woman he had known for 3 weeks. He said it, and then he sat very still, waiting for the thing everybody always said, which was that it wasn't his fault. Margaret didn't say it wasn't his fault. She said 40 minutes. Yes, and you've been paying that off ever since, twice a week, Thursdays and Sundays. Ethan's throat closed. Something like that. Then you're the first person in this building who might actually understand me, Margaret said, and I've been trying very hard not to like you. That was the night she told him the name. Claire. Claire Collins, 29 years old, a photographer somewhere out there, in a country the size of an ocean. Margaret said the name carefully, like a woman lifting something out of a box she hadn't opened in years, and then she stopped, and it was another 20 minutes before she said anything else at all. 5 years, she said finally, since you spoke. Since I heard her voice. She sent a card once, 2 Christmases ago. It said, "Merry Christmas, Mom." Not one other word. I read that card so many times I wore the ink off with my thumb. What happened 5 years ago? Nothing happened 5 years ago, Margaret said. That's what nobody understands. There was no fight. There was no terrible night. There was just a Tuesday when she packed a car, and I stood in the driveway and I said the wrong thing, and she drove away, and both of us decided the other one should apologize first. What was the wrong thing? Margaret's mouth trembled. I said if you leave, you'll regret it. She pressed her hand flat against her chest. I meant please don't go. I have never in my life been able to say the second one. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan learned the shape of it in pieces out of order, the way real stories always come out. He learned that Claire's father, Daniel, had died when Claire was 9, a heart attack in the driveway on a Saturday morning while he was loading a canoe onto the roof of the car. He learned that Margaret had been 38 years old, holding a hose in her hand, and that she had watched it happen through a screen door. He learned that afterward Margaret had become a woman who could not let her daughter out of her sight. I checked on her at night, Margaret said. Not once, 6, 7 times. I would stand in the doorway and count her breaths, and in the morning I'd tell her a bad dream woke me because I didn't want her to know her mother was insane. You weren't insane. I put a curfew on a 19-year-old. I called her college roommate to confirm her whereabouts. I told her she could not take a photography job in Arizona because I had read an article about a highway. She looked at the window. When she was 23, she was offered a place with a magazine in New Mexico. I cried at the kitchen table until she turned it down. I didn't even have to argue. I just cried and she stayed and I let her stay. Margaret, do you know what she said to me the week before she left for good? She said, Mom, you love me like a person who's already lost me. Margaret's voice broke on the last word. And I said, don't be dramatic. Ethan sat with that. You've tried to reach her, he said. Every month, Margaret said. For 5 years. He hadn't expected that. You've written her 61 letters, Margaret said. I know the number because I numbered them. I am a legal secretary. I number things. And she never answered any of them. Not one. The room was quiet. 61 letters is not silence, Ethan said slowly. 61 letters is a woman screaming. Then she chose not to hear me, and that is her right. Margaret's chin came up. I earned that. Nobody earns 61. Don't, Margaret said. Don't you dare give me hope at my age. Hope is the only thing in here that still hurts. He let it go that night. He didn't let it go in his head, because something didn't sit right, and it kept not sitting right through Friday and Saturday, and on Sunday he asked Rosa a question in the medication room while she was counting out a tray. When patients want to mail something, how does it go out? Front desk. There's the basket. Bev takes it to the box on the corner when she goes home. Always. Mostly. Rosa didn't look up. Sometimes family takes it, saves Bev a trip. Ethan's hands went cold. Does Margaret Collins's family take it? Now Rosa looked up. Why are you asking me that? Because she says she's written 61 letters to her daughter and never gotten one word back. Rosa put down the tray. He's her healthcare proxy, she said quietly. He's on the paperwork. He's allowed to be in that room. I want you to hear me say that because I've worked here 9 years and I need this job. Rosa, I've seen him carry envelopes out of that basket, she said, twice, and both times he said he was going right past the post office. Ethan stood in a medication room that smelled like antiseptic and did not move for a long time. Don't say anything to her, Rosa said. Not until you know. You understand me, that woman has 4 weeks. You do not put that in her hands unless it's true. I understand. He did not sleep that night or the next. He came back on Thursday, and Margaret knew immediately that something was different because Margaret Collins knew everything immediately. You're wound up like a clock. I'm fine. Mr. Walker. Margaret. I have 3 or 4 weeks left, and you are going to spend one of my Thursdays lying to me. So he asked her the only question he could ask without making a promise he couldn't keep. The letters you wrote, how did they get mailed? Margaret went very still. Why? Please. Bev takes them, she said. Sometimes my nephew offers if he's leaving anyway. He's on the way past the post office. He lives out toward Gresham. 61 letters, Ethan said, and not one came back marked undeliverable. What are you saying? I'm not saying anything. I'm asking whether any of them ever came back. Margaret's hand went under the pillow and rested on the journal and stayed there. No, she said. Not one ever came back. And then, because she was the smartest person in that building, Ethan watched her get there without him. No, she said. Margaret. No, he would not. Her voice climbed. He is my sister's boy. I held him when he was 4 days old. I don't know anything yet. Then why are you sitting there with that face? Because a woman who writes 61 letters gets 61 answers, or she gets one envelope back, Ethan said. She doesn't get nothing. Nothing isn't a natural number, Margaret. Nothing has to be built. Margaret Collins put both hands over her mouth. She did not cry. She sat there with her hands over her mouth like a woman trying to keep something from getting out, and finally she said through her fingers, 5 years. I know. 5 years I have been apologizing to a woman who never received a single apology. She lowered her hands. 5 years I have laid in the dark and thought she hates me so much she won't even send it back. We don't know yet. Then find out, Margaret said. Find out this week. He found out the following Thursday, and he found out in the worst possible way, which is to say, he found out by accident and in front of her. He had come early. He was in the hall with the 2 cups of tea, and Wesley Pryor was already in room 14, and this time Ethan did not stop at the water fountain. This time he walked straight in. Wesley was standing at the foot of the bed with his folder. Margaret was sitting up with an envelope in both hands, a fresh one, thick, the flap still open, and there was a name written across the front in blue ink in a careful hand. Claire. I'm asking you to mail this one yourself, Margaret was saying. Today, and I'm asking you to bring me the receipt. The receipt. Certified mail. It costs $4 and change. I'll pay for it out of my account. Wesley laughed. It was a short, disbelieving, offended laugh, and Ethan would remember it for the rest of his life. You want a receipt? From me? Yes. After everything I've done for you. Wesley. Do you know who sat with the mortgage company? Do you know who has been paying the water bill on an empty house for 11 weeks? His voice rose. Do you know who was here, Aunt Margaret, while your precious daughter was taking pictures of abandoned gas stations in Nevada? Give me back the envelope. Because he had taken it. He had taken it out of her hands while he was talking the way you take a toy from a child so smoothly that Ethan almost didn't see it happen. You're not doing this again, Wesley said. Give it back. She isn't coming. She never was. I'm doing you a favor. And he tore it in half. The sound of it was not loud. That was the thing Ethan could never get over afterward. A letter is not a heavy object. It tears the way a leaf tears. There was a small dry sound, and then a second one, and then 2 halves of an envelope were on the floor of room 14, and Margaret Collins made a noise that Ethan had never heard a human being make before. He was on his knees before he knew he was moving. Get out, he said. Wesley turned. Excuse me. Get out of this room. Who exactly are you? I'm a volunteer. Then you have no standing here whatsoever, and I am her healthcare proxy, and I will have you removed from this facility. Ethan stood up with the pieces in his hand. 61 letters, he said. Wesley's face changed. It was a very small change. If Ethan had blinked, he would have missed it. But it was there, a flicker, the exact expression of a man who has just heard a number he did not expect anybody to have counted. I don't know what you're talking about. She numbered them, Ethan said. She's a legal secretary. She numbers things. This is a private family matter. How many did you mail? I want you out. How many, Wesley? And Margaret said from the bed in a voice like a door closing, Wesley Allen Pryor, look at me. He didn't want to. Ethan watched him not want to. And then he did. How many of my letters did you mail? You were writing to a woman who abandoned you. How many? You were humiliating yourself. How many? She should not have been able to shout like that. She weighed 104 pounds. She had a tube in her nose and a chart on the door with a number on it, and she shouted like a woman standing in a driveway. Wesley Pryor straightened his cuffs. I threw them out, he said. The room went completely silent. You threw them out. I read the first 2, and I threw all of them out, and I would do it again because they were pathetic. His voice was shaking now, and that was somehow the worst part because he believed it. He genuinely believed it. You were begging. You, my mother's sister, begging a girl who couldn't be bothered to answer a phone, and I was not going to let you spend your last year on your knees for someone who does not deserve you." "That was not your choice," Margaret whispered. "Somebody had to make it." "That was not your choice." "She'd have taken the house too," Wesley said. "That's what this is really about, and everyone in this room knows it." And Ethan Walker, who had spent 2 years learning to sit quietly with dying people and never raise his voice, took 2 steps forward and said very calmly, "You are going to leave and you are never going to come back here. And if you do, I will call every attorney in the phone book until I find one who thinks a healthcare proxy destroying a patient's correspondence is worth a morning of his time." Wesley looked at him for a long moment. Then he picked up his folder and left, and the door swung slowly shut behind him, and neither of them said anything for almost a full minute. Margaret was shaking. 5 years, she said. "I know. She thinks I never wrote. Margaret. She thinks her mother let her go, and never once, not one time in 5 years, reached out to say I'm sorry." Margaret's face came apart. Oh God, what does she think of me?" "She thinks what she was allowed to think. I let him take them. I handed them to him. 61 times I handed them to him and said thank you. You trusted family. I taught her not to trust anybody, and then I trusted the one person I shouldn't have." Ethan pulled the chair close and did the only thing he could do, which was sit there while a 68-year-old woman cried the way people cry when the thing they're grieving is time. It went on a long while. Eventually, she stopped the way people do not because they're finished, but because the body gets tired. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. She looked at the 2 torn halves of the envelope on the bedside table. "Give me those," she said. He handed them over. "It's ruined." "Paper's fine," Ethan said. "Only the envelope tore." She slid the pages out. 4 sheets, both sides, that same careful hand. She held them against her chest. "I have rewritten this letter 40 times," she said. 40. The first version was a defense. The second was an explanation. The 10th was still an explanation, just shorter. She almost smiled. "The 40th is the only honest one. It took me 5 years and a terminal diagnosis to stop explaining myself." "What does it say?" "It says I was wrong." Ethan waited. "It says I confused fear with love, and I did it for 20 years, and by the time I understood the difference, she was already gone." Margaret's hands tightened on the pages. "It says some things about her father that she doesn't know, and it says one thing at the end that I have never said out loud to any living person, and I will not be saying it out loud now, so don't ask." "I won't ask." "Good." Then she looked up at him, and her eyes had changed. There was something in them that had not been there 15 minutes earlier. It was not grief. Ethan had gotten very good at recognizing grief. This was something with a spine in it. "Ethan," she said. It was the first time she had used his first name. "Yes." "How much vacation time does a high school teacher have in November?" He felt the floor tilt. "Margaret, answer the question." "Not much. I have 3 personal days." "How far is Seattle?" 3 hours. "Then you can be back by Sunday." She reached under her pillow and she pulled out the old brown journal with the rubber band around it, and she took out a photograph that had been pressed inside the back cover, and she held it out to him with a hand that would not stop trembling. A young woman, maybe 23, standing in front of a car with a camera around her neck, squinting into the sun, caught mid-laugh, not posing at all. "That is my daughter," Margaret said. "I can't just find a person, Margaret. It's a country." "She has a show," Margaret said. "That's the part I never told you. I know exactly where she'll be on the 14th, because she has a photography exhibition in Seattle, and it is her last one because after that she is moving to Europe, and I do not know for how long or if she is ever coming back." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I have been reading about my daughter on the internet for 5 years like a stranger," Margaret said. "Because that is what you do when you have burned the front door. You watch the house from the street." Ethan looked at the photograph in his hand. "If I find her," he said slowly, "she is going to want to know who I am, and I am going to have to tell her that her mother is dying, and she may hang up, she may throw me out, she may not care. She'll care. You don't know that." "I know my daughter," Margaret said. "She cares about everything. That was always the problem. It's the reason she had to leave." She folded the 4 pages and slid them into a fresh envelope from the drawer, and she wrote the name across the front again, blue ink, careful hand. Claire. Then she held it out, and she did not let go of it right away when he took it. For a second, they were both holding it. "Find her," Margaret said. "Give her this." "But Ethan." "Yes. Promise me one thing." He leaned closer. "Don't let her read it alone." Ethan looked at the envelope and at the old woman holding the other end of it, and he heard himself ask the question he had been carrying around for 11 years without ever once saying it out loud. "Why me? You've got nurses in this building who've known you since August. Why does it have to be me?" Margaret Collins tightened her grip on the paper. "Because you know what it feels like," she said, "to lose someone before you were ready." And then she let go. He did not tell anyone at the school the real reason. He told the vice principal his aunt was sick, which was a lie he felt in his stomach for 2 days, and he filed for personal days on Monday morning and on Wednesday the 13th of November. At 4:40 in the afternoon, Ethan Walker put an envelope in the glove compartment of a 9-year-old Honda and drove north out of Portland with his hands at 10 and 2 like a man taking a driving test. He stopped once in Centralia for gas. He did not buy a sandwich. He stood at the pump for 11 minutes with his jaw locked, and when the tank clicked full, he got back in the car and did not stop again. He was in Seattle by 7:50. The gallery was on the second floor of a converted warehouse in Pioneer Square, and the show opened at 6 the following evening, and Ethan spent that entire night in a motel bed, staring at a water stain on the ceiling rehearsing. He rehearsed 40 different versions. "Miss Collins, my name is Ethan Walker, and I'm a volunteer at a hospice in Portland. Miss Collins, I need 6 minutes of your time. Miss Collins, your mother is dying, and she has been writing to you for 5 years. None of them worked. Every single one of them, when he said it out loud in an empty room at 2 in the morning, sounded like a man delivering a subpoena." He called Rosa at 7 the next morning. "How is she?" "She had a bad night," Rosa said. "Not the worst, but not good." "Define bad." "Ethan." "Define bad, Rosa." "She's asking what time it is every 20 minutes, Rosa said quietly. "She's counting. She thinks nobody notices, but she's counting." He sat down on the edge of the motel bed. "Has he been back?" "No. And I told Bev at the front desk that nothing leaves that room except through me." Rosa paused. "Go do the thing you drove up there to do." The doors opened at 6. Ethan got there at 6:05 and stood across the street for another 40 minutes because he was a coward, and he knew he was a coward, and knowing it did not make his feet move. At 6:45, he went up the stairs. There were maybe 60 people in the room holding plastic cups of wine, talking the way people talk at these things, which is loudly about everything except the pictures. And the pictures were of empty places. A drive-in movie screen with weeds through the concrete. A church with the roof gone. A diner counter with 11 stools and dust on all of them. A motel sign in the desert still lit, advertising a motel that no longer existed. Every photograph in the room was of something that had been left behind. Ethan stood in front of the motel sign for a long time. "That one gets people," a woman said beside him. He turned. She was shorter than he expected. In the photograph, the one Margaret had pressed into the back of a journal, she had been 23 and mid-laugh. This woman was 29 and not laughing, and she had her hair pulled back, and she had a plastic cup she wasn't drinking from, and she had her mother's exact chin. "Are you the photographer?" "Guilty." "Claire Collins." "That's the one." She glanced at him. "You said that like you were checking it off a list." His heart went sideways. "I've been standing here 20 minutes trying to figure out why it bothers me," he said, which was true and which was not what he had rehearsed at all. "Why, what bothers you?" "The sign's still on." Claire went very still. "Say more." "Everything else in the frame gave up," Ethan said. "The building's gone, the parking lot's gone, but somebody's still paying that electric bill or the wire never got cut. And either way, there's a light burning in the middle of nowhere for nobody. That's not a picture of an abandoned place. That's a picture of something that doesn't know it's over." Claire Collins looked at the photograph, and then she looked at him, and something in her face opened about a quarter of an inch. "Nobody said that," she said. "In 4 cities, nobody said that. What do they say, Mo? They say it's nostalgic." She said the word like it tasted bad. "They say it's a commentary on the death of the American road trip. One guy in Denver told me it was about capitalism." "Was it about capitalism?" "It was about my father," Claire said, and then she blinked, and Ethan watched her hear herself. "Wow. Okay, I don't know why I said that to a stranger." "People tell me things," Ethan said. "It's a problem." "What do you do?" "I teach history." "Of course you do." She laughed. It was short and real. You've got the whole thing, the corduroy jacket, the face. What face? The face that makes people talk about their fathers at wine receptions. And that was the moment. Right there, 6:55 on Thursday evening, with 60 people in the room and an envelope in his inside pocket. That was the moment he was supposed to say it. He opened his mouth. A man in a black turtleneck put a hand on Claire's elbow and said, "Claire the Kestrel. People are here, they're leaving in 10 minutes. And Claire said, "I'm coming," and turned back to Ethan with an apologetic look. "Sorry, that's my gallerist. He's twitchy. Go. Are you around after there's a thing at a bar down the block? Everyone in this room is going to tell me my work is brave, and I would genuinely pay money to talk to one person who isn't going to do that. I don't drink much." "Neither do I. That's not what bars are for." She was gone before he could answer. Ethan stood in front of the motel sign for another 10 minutes with his hand on the envelope through his jacket and told himself he would do it at the bar, and knew even as he told himself that he had just made a decision he would pay for. The bar was loud until 11, and then it emptied out, and by midnight it was Claire and Ethan in a booth and 4 other people at the far end, and she had told him about Nevada and Kansas and the 2 months she spent photographing a town in Pennsylvania where the ground had been on fire underneath it since 1962. They kept living there, she said. That's the part nobody believes. The state paid people to leave and some of them wouldn't go. There's a man there who's the last resident and he mows a lawn on a street with no other houses. Why does he stay? Because it's his. Claire turned her cup in a circle. Because leaving would mean the whole thing was a waste. People will burn on top of a fire for years before they'll admit the last 40 were a mistake. Is that what your pictures are about? My pictures are about whatever the guy in Denver says they're about. That's a dodge. That's my whole personality, Claire said. Ask anyone. He should have said it then. Instead he said, "Are you actually leaving? Somebody at the gallery said you were moving." Copenhagen, December 9th. She said it flatly, the way you say a date you've said too many times. 2-year residency, housing stipend, the whole thing. I applied on a Tuesday when I was in a very specific mood, and then it happened. Congratulations. Say it like you mean it. I don't know you well enough to mean it, Ethan said. I've known you 6 hours. For all I know, it's a disaster. Claire laughed out loud. God, that's refreshing. She pushed her cup away. Everybody's been so happy for me I want to scream. My gallerist cried. My friend Bethany threw a party. And I keep waiting to feel the thing you're supposed to feel, and instead I've been waking up at 4 in the morning for 6 weeks. Waking up why? Unfinished business, she said. Ethan's hand went to his chest without his permission. Claire saw it. She was a photographer. She saw everything. You okay? Long drive today. From where to Portland? And there it was. He watched it land. He watched a woman's whole spine change in a booth in a bar at midnight. You drove up from Portland, she said. Yes. For a photography show. Yes. Do you go to a lot of photography shows, Ethan, the history teacher? No. Claire sat back. Okay, she said slowly. So either you're about to tell me something very strange, or you're about to tell me something very sad, and I want you to know before you do that, I have had a hell of a year. Say it. Say it now. Say it in a bar where she has friends 40 feet away and can get up and walk out and be home in 10 minutes. My father died 11 years ago, Ethan said. That was what came out. It was true. It was not a lie. It was also the single most cowardly true thing he could have chosen, and he knew it while it was leaving his mouth. Claire's face changed to something soft. Oh, she said. I got there 40 minutes late. And I've been volunteering at a hospice on Sundays ever since because I can't stand the idea of somebody going out of this world with nobody in the chair. And you drove 3 hours to a gallery because somebody told me I should see your work, Ethan said, and because I have a thing about people who photograph what's left behind. Claire looked at him for a long, long moment. That, she said, is the most Portland sentence I've ever heard. He laughed and she laughed, and the moment closed over the top of the truth like water over a stone. It was 1 in the morning. He had been holding the envelope for 8 days. He would hold it for 11 more. She texted him at 9 the next morning before he had checked out of the motel. There's a place that does eggs. You're not driving back on gas station coffee. He should have driven back on gas station coffee. Instead, he sat across from Claire Collins for 2 hours and 40 minutes and learned that she hated being photographed, that she had a scar on her left hand from a darkroom accident when she was 17, that she had lived in 14 apartments in 5 years, and that she could not sleep in a room where she could not see the door. Why not? I don't know, she said. Therapist has theories. I stopped going. Why'd you stop? Because she kept wanting to talk about my mother, Claire said, and I'd rather chew glass. Ethan set down his fork. You don't have to say anything, he said. See, now I'm going to. Claire, that's the trick, right? That's the thing you do at the hospice. She pointed her fork at him, almost smiling, almost not. You don't ask, and then people can't stand it and they tell you anyway. That's not a trick. It's a little bit of a trick. She was quiet for a second. She's alive, Claire said, in case that's what you're wondering. Everyone assumes she's dead because I never mention her, and then I have to do the whole thing where I say no, she's fine, she's in Portland, and then they get this look. Portland. How long? Ethan asked. 5 years, 4 months. Claire said the number without hesitating, and Ethan felt something cold go down his back, because Margaret had said 5 years without hesitating too, and here were 2 women on opposite ends of a state counting the same days. What happened? Nothing happened. That's what nobody understands. He put his hands flat on the table so they would stop shaking. There was no fight. There was a driveway, Claire said. There was a car with everything I owned in it, and she stood there with her arms crossed and said, "If you leave, you'll regret it." Claire's mouth twisted. And you know what the worst part is? I've spent 5 years being furious at that sentence. 5 years, and it's such a small sentence. What did you say back? I said I already do. Ethan closed his eyes. I was 24, Claire said. I meant I already regret the last 15 years. She heard I already regret you. And I knew she heard it that way. I saw it hit her. And I got in the car anyway because I had spent 2 weeks working up to leaving. And if I got out of that car, I was never getting out of that town. You never called. I called, Claire said. Ethan looked up. What? I called 11 times in the first year. She shrugged, and the shrug was a terrible thing to watch. She never picked up, not once. And after the 11th time, I decided I was done being the one who reached. She never picked up the phone. Nope. Claire. He heard his own voice go strange. Did you leave messages? 6 or 7. On a landline. On the house phone. Yeah, she's 68. She's not on a cell. Claire looked at him. Why is your face doing that? Because Wesley Pryor had been paying the water bill on an empty house for 11 weeks. Because Wesley Pryor had a key. Because Margaret Collins had been in a hospice bed since August, and in a hospital before that, and the machine that took those messages was sitting on a table in a house nobody lived in. Nothing, Ethan said. That's twice now you've said nothing with your whole face. I'm thinking about my father. She let him have it. That was the thing about Claire. She let him have it, and she didn't push, and she picked up the check while he was still reaching for his wallet, and she said, "Same time next week. I live in Portland." I have a car, Claire said. I have famously always had a car. He drove home that afternoon with the envelope in the glove compartment and told himself the drive was the last one. It was not the last one. She came down on Tuesday. He drove up on Friday. She came down again the following Wednesday and stayed at a friend's place in Ladd's Addition, and they walked around Mount Tabor in the rain for 2 hours, arguing about whether a photograph of a person who doesn't know they're being photographed is a theft or a gift. And at the end of it, she stopped walking and said, I have to tell you something, and it's going to sound insane. Okay. I moved my flight. Ethan's stomach dropped. To when? January 11th. She wouldn't look at him. I told the residency I had a family thing, which is a lie. I don't have a family thing. I have a thing where I met a man 3 weeks ago, and I keep driving 173 miles to eat breakfast. Claire, don't be nice about it. If you're going to let me down, do it fast. I'm not letting you down. Then say something. And Ethan Walker stood on a hill in the rain with a woman he had known for 22 days and understood completely and all at once the size of what he had done. He said, I need to tell you something too. Okay. And his phone rang. It was Rosa, and it was 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, and Rosa never called at 4 p.m. I have to take this. Take it. He walked 20 feet away. Ethan, Rosa said, she's asking for you. Is she? She's stable. It's not tonight. But she had a rough one at lunch, and she keeps asking what day it is. Rosa's voice dropped. Honey, she asked me if you'd changed your mind. Ethan turned around. Claire was standing in the rain with her hands in her jacket pockets, watching him with an expression he had already learned to read, and what it said was, "Whatever it is, just tell me." "I'm coming," he said to Rosa, and hung up. "Everything okay?" "One of my patients." "Go." "Claire." "Ethan, go." She was already reaching for her keys. "I'll be here. That's the whole point of me. I'm here." He drove to Cedar Hollow with his hands shaking on the wheel. Margaret was smaller than she had been 8 days ago. That was the thing that got him. He had been away 192 hours, and she had lost something in that time that she was not going to get back. "You look terrible," she said. "Thanks." "Did you find her?" He sat down. "Yes." Margaret's whole face moved. "You found her." "I found her the first night, at the show." "And here it was." "And I haven't given her the letter," Ethan said. Margaret went quiet. "Say that again." "I've seen her 7 times in 3 weeks. I've had breakfast with her. I've walked around a park with her. And the envelope is in my glove compartment, Margaret, and every single time I get close, You what?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do. I don't want to be the man who does that to her." His voice cracked and he hated it. "You didn't see her face when she talks about you. There's a woman in Seattle who thinks her mother didn't pick up the phone 11 times. 11, Margaret. She called 11 times in the first year." Margaret's hands closed on the blanket. "She called. On the house phone. She left messages." "I have not lived in that house since the 8th of June, Margaret said. "I have not heard that machine in 5 months." "I know." "Who has the key?" Ethan didn't answer. "Who has the key, Ethan? You know who has the key." Margaret Collins put her head back against the pillow and made a sound like something tearing. "He told me," she said. "He told me, 2 Christmases ago. He said I stopped by the house. There's nothing on the machine, Aunt Margaret. You have to accept it. He said it standing right there, and I thanked him." "Margaret." "I thanked him for checking." She started to cry, and it was worse than the first time, because the first time had been shock, and this was arithmetic. This was a woman doing 5 years of subtraction in her head and getting a number she could not survive. "Every message," she said, "every letter, both directions." "Yes." "He built a wall between me and my child out of nothing but silence, and both of us walked up to it and decided the other one put it there." Margaret wiped her face with the heel of her hand. "And now I have 3 weeks." 2, Ethan said. "Rosa told me the truth in the hall." Margaret laughed. It was the ugliest sound he had ever heard. "Well," she said, "at least somebody around here tells me things." That went in like a knife, and she saw it go in, and she did not take it back. "Ethan." "Yes." "Why haven't you given her the letter?" "I told you. You told me a story about protecting her. Now tell me the real one." He sat there with his hands hanging between his knees. "Because the second she reads it," he said, "she'll know I've been lying to her since the first night, since the first hour. She'll know every conversation we've had a hole in it. She'll know that when she told me about the driveway, I already knew about the driveway." "Yes," Margaret said. "She will." "She moved her flight for me." "What?" "She was leaving on the 9th of December. She moved it to January because of me." He looked up. "She doesn't have a family thing. That's what she said. I don't have a family thing." Margaret Collins stared at him. And then she said something that Ethan did not expect and would not understand for another 8 days. "You have to tell her tonight." "Margaret, Tonight, Ethan." "Why tonight? Why not Saturday when I can be there in person, when I can—" "Because I don't have Saturday!" Margaret shouted. And then she coughed, and the cough went on, and Ethan was on his feet with his hand on the call button, and she caught his wrist with a grip like wire and would not let him press it. "Not yet," she wheezed. "Not yet. Sit down." He sat down. "Listen to me," Margaret said when she could talk. "You are doing the thing I did. That's not— You are standing between my daughter and something that belongs to her, and you have a very good reason, and I had a very good reason for 20 years. Her eyes were streaming and her voice was steady. "I never once did it out of malice, not one single time. I did it because I loved her and I was afraid, and every morning I told myself I would let go tomorrow, and I ran out of tomorrows in a driveway." "Margaret." "Love is not protecting somebody from pain," Margaret said. "Love is trusting them enough to face it. I learned that at 68 years old in a bed I'm going to die in. Don't take that long." Ethan couldn't speak. Go call my daughter, she said. He drove to the parking lot and sat in the car with the phone in his hand for 11 minutes. He called at 9:40 on a Wednesday night. She picked up on the second ring, and she was happy, and that was the thing that nearly stopped him because she picked up like a woman who was glad it was him. Hey, how's your patient? Claire, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me get all the way through it. The line changed. He could hear it change. Okay. Your mother is at Cedar Hollow Hospice in Southeast Portland. She has pancreatic cancer. She has weeks, not months. I've been sitting with her twice a week since November 2nd, and she asked me to find you, and I found you on the 14th at your show, and I have had a letter from her in my car for 22 days. Silence. Claire, say the last part again. I have a letter from her in my car. Since when? Since before I walked into your gallery. The silence went on so long he checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. You knew, Claire said. Yes. You knew who I was before you said one word to me. Yes. The motel sign. Her voice was going up thin and fast. You stood there for 20 minutes, and you said this beautiful thing about a light burning for nobody, and you already had a letter in your pocket. Claire, I told you about this driveway. She was crying now, and it was furious crying. I sat across a table and told you the worst sentence anyone ever said to me, and you sat there and let me, and you already knew. I know. Don't say I know. I'm sorry. Don't say that either. He heard her moving, heard something set down hard. 5 years. 5 years I thought she didn't pick up the phone, and you've had her side of it in a glove compartment for 3 weeks, and you decided what? You decided I couldn't handle it. I decided you deserved to hear it in person. No! The word came out of her like something breaking. No, that's what she said. That's the exact thing she said. You decided what I could handle. Ethan sat with the phone against his ear in a hospice parking lot and had nothing at all to say because she was right, and there was no version of it where she wasn't. There's more, he said. I don't want more. Claire, listen to me. Your calls, I don't want more, Ethan. She never got them, he said. She never got one of them. And you never got 61 letters because your cousin Wesley took them out of the mail basket at the front desk and threw them away, and he had the key to the house, and he wiped the machine, and he told her there was nothing on it. Nothing. Not a sound. Then very quietly, what did you just say? 61 letters, Ethan said. She numbered them. She's a legal secretary, Claire. She numbers things. He heard her breathing. She wrote me 61 letters, every month for 5 years. And he, Claire stopped, started again. Wesley. Yes. Wesley, who sat at my father's funeral and told me he'd look out for us. Yes. And then Claire Collins said the last thing Ethan Walker expected to hear that night, in a voice so flat it frightened him more than the shouting had. Ethan, she said, I need you to sit down. I'm sitting. He called me, she said. Wesley called me 2 years ago, right after that Christmas card, and he told me my mother had said word for word that she was finally at peace with the decision, and that she was asking me to stop reaching out because every time I did it, set her back. Ethan could not breathe. He said she was in a good place, Claire said. He said she had made her peace, and I needed to respect it, and I believed him because why would anybody make that up? Claire. That's why I stopped, she said. That's why I stopped calling, not because I gave up, because he told me she asked me to. Ethan sat in that parking lot with the engine off and the cold coming up through the floor and could not make his mouth work. He told you your mother asked you to stop, he said finally, word for word. And you believed him. Why wouldn't I? Claire's voice was rising again. He's family. He was at the funeral. He held my hand at the funeral, Ethan. I was 9 years old and he was 17, and he told me he'd take care of us. Why would a person like that call me up and lie about the one thing that would keep me away forever? And Ethan Walker, who taught teenagers why people who should have known better did terrible things anyway, heard himself answer before he had finished thinking it. The house, he said. What? He's been paying the water bill on your mother's house for 5 months. He's the healthcare proxy. He's the one who handles the estate if there's nobody else. Ethan closed his eyes. If you and your mother never speak again, Claire, who inherits... The silence on the line was total. No, Claire said. Claire. No, that's people don't do that. That's a movie. People don't wall off a dying woman from her kid over a house in Southeast Portland that's worth, what, $400,000. $400,000 is a lot of money to a man paying a water bill he resents. Stop. You asked me why. I know what I asked. Her breath was ragged. I need you to stop saying it out loud for 1 second so I can God. 2 years. I have spent 2 years thinking she asked me to disappear. Do you understand what that did to me? I built a whole self around it. I told people my mother let me go. I put it in my artist statement, Ethan. It's on the wall in that gallery right now. There's a paragraph on the wall about erasure and the people who choose it, and I was talking about her. Ethan pressed his fist against his mouth. She was choosing it every month, he said, 61 times. Don't. There's a stack of them. She kept copies. She's a legal secretary, Claire. She kept carbon copies of her own letters because that's what she does, and they're in a journal under her pillow, and I've seen it and it's real, and you can read every single one. He heard her stop breathing. Then he heard her start to cry, and it was not the furious crying from before. It was worse. It was the crying of a person who has just been handed proof of the exact opposite of what they built their life on and does not know where to put their body. I have to go, she said. Claire, I have to go. I can't. I have to go. And she hung up. It was 10:15 on a Wednesday night. He called her back 4 times. She did not pick up. He drove home and sat in his own driveway until midnight, and he did not go inside because going inside meant it was over, and he called Rosa instead. How is she? Sleeping. Rosa's voice was thick. Ethan, it's after midnight. I told the daughter. Rosa was quiet. And I don't know, Ethan said. She hung up. There's more, Rosa. It's worse than the letters. The nephew called her 2 years ago and told her Margaret asked her to stop reaching out. He built it from both ends. He heard Rosa exhale. That's premeditated, she said. Yes. Ethan, that's not a man who lost his temper and tore an envelope. That's a man who made phone calls. I know. You need to think about whether that man is going to be a problem before Margaret. Rosa stopped. Before the end. Because the second she's gone, he's the proxy, and he's the one who signs things, and if he decides the daughter isn't welcome at the... She stopped again. You know what I'm saying? Ethan sat up in the dark. He had not thought about it. He had been so far inside the emotional shape of the thing, the mother and the daughter, and the letter that he had not once thought about the machinery of it, the paper, the signatures, the man in the gray suit with the folder who had been quietly arranging a death for months. He can keep her out, Ethan said slowly. He can try. He can decide who's in the room. Legally, it's complicated. In practice at 2 a.m. when it's just him and a night nurse and a decision to make. Yeah, he can make it very hard. Then I have to get Claire here before he figures out I told her. Ethan, what? You should sleep. I'm not going to sleep. I know, Rosa said. I just wanted it on the record that I told you to. He didn't sleep. At 6 the next morning, Thursday, his phone buzzed on the nightstand, and he had it open before the second buzz. It was not Claire. It was a text from a number he didn't recognize, and it said, "This is Wesley Pryor. We need to talk. I'll be at the facility at 9. Ethan read it 3 times. He was at Cedar Hollow at 8:15. Rosa met him in the hall with a look on her face that told him everything before she said a word. He called the front desk at 7, she said. He wanted to know if a volunteer named Ethan Walker had signed in on the 14th, and whether that same volunteer had, quote, been making unauthorized contact with the family. How does he know I contacted Claire? I don't think he does, Rosa said. I think he knows you drove to Seattle. Bev keeps a sign-in sheet, and he asked to see it, and it's got you out on the 14th, and he's not stupid, Ethan. He connected the show to the date. Ethan's stomach turned over. Is Margaret awake? Awake and sharp. Better than yesterday, actually. It happens sometimes near the... Rosa caught herself. She's having a good morning. Go. He's not here yet. Margaret was sitting up. You look like you slept in a car, she said. I told her. Margaret's hands went still on the blanket. And there's something you need to know before Wesley gets here. Ethan pulled the chair close and took both her hands, which he had never done, and she let him, which told him she already knew it was bad. 2 years ago, right after that Christmas card, Wesley called Claire. Margaret's face did not move. He told her you'd said word for word that you were finally at peace and you were asking her to stop reaching out. He told her every time she called it set you back. He told her to respect your wishes and disappear. Margaret Collins looked at the window for a long time. That's why she stopped calling, she said. Yes. She wasn't giving up on me. No, she thought she was doing what you asked. And Margaret, who had shouted at him yesterday until she coughed, who had cried 5 years of arithmetic into a pillow, did something Ethan was not prepared for. She got very, very calm. The kind of calm that is not peace. The kind of calm that is the opposite of peace wearing its coat. "He's coming at 9, she said. "How did you—" "Because I know him," Margaret said. "He texted you, didn't he? He'd never come without warning me first. He likes people to have time to get frightened." Ethan said nothing. "Help me sit up straighter," Margaret said. "I don't want to be lying down when he walks in." "Margaret, you don't have to see him. Rosa can turn him away at the desk. You have the right to refuse." "I am going to see him," Margaret said, "and you are going to be in the room, and you are not going to say one word unless I ask you to. Do you understand me, Margaret? Do you understand me, Ethan?" He helped her sit up straighter. Wesley Pryor arrived at 9:04. He had the folder. Of course he had the folder. He came in without knocking, and saw Ethan in the chair, and stopped in the doorway, and something crossed his face, a recalculation, and then he smoothed it over and closed the door behind him with a soft click that was somehow worse than a slam. "Aunt Margaret." He did not look at Ethan. "I'd hoped we could speak privately." "He stays. This is family business." "He stays, Wesley, or you leave. Those are the two options, and you may pick either one." Wesley set the folder on the rolling table. "There have been some developments," he said. "I've learned that this gentleman drove to Seattle on the 14th of November the same evening. Claire had a gallery opening. I'd like to understand what's going on, because if a hospice volunteer is inserting himself into a fragile family situation without authorization, that's something the facility needs to know about." "He went to see my daughter because I asked him to," Margaret said. Wesley's jaw tightened. "You asked him to?" "I asked him to find Claire and give her a letter, which he did." She paused. "Well, he found her. The letter's a longer story. But he found her, Wesley, and they've spoken, and my daughter now knows quite a lot of things she didn't know a week ago." Ethan watched the man's face do the math, and he watched the exact moment Wesley Pryor understood that the wall he'd spent 5 years building had a hole in it. "Whatever he's told her," Wesley said, "is going to be a very confused, very one-sided— How many letters did I write her? Aunt Margaret, you said you'd mail them. Every month I handed you an envelope, and you said you'd drop it at the post office because you were headed that way." Margaret's voice did not rise. That was the terrifying part. It got lower. "How many did you mail, Wesley?" "I mailed the ones that mattered." "You mailed none of them." "I did what was best for you." And now his voice cracked, and Ethan realized the man believed, it still believed it was going to defend it. "You were destroying yourself. You'd get one back. No, you wouldn't even get one back. You'd get nothing, and you'd spend a week in bed. And I watched it happen for years, and I made a decision that somebody in this family had to make— You called her." The room went silent. Wesley stopped. "You called my daughter 2 years ago," Margaret said, "and you told her I asked her to stay away." Wesley Pryor's mouth opened, and nothing came out. "You put words in my mouth. You told my child that her mother had made her peace and wanted her gone. You didn't just take my letters, Wesley. You reached across 3 states, and you took my voice, and you used it to send her away, and then you came here and sat in that chair and told me she'd chosen to disappear." Margaret's hands were shaking now, but her voice was iron. "You told me my own daughter erased me, and I believed you. I put it in my heart, and I believed you for 2 years. Aunt Margaret, whatever this man has, don't." She lifted one hand. "Don't you dare do the thing where you make it his lie instead of yours. He drove to Seattle. He gave up his Sundays. He sat with me twice a week and argued with me about Harry Truman, and never once wanted a thing from me. And you." She looked at him, and Ethan had never seen contempt like it, not in a courtroom, not anywhere. "You wanted the house. That is not— Say it isn't about the house. It was never— Say it, Wesley. Look at me and say the house has nothing to do with it." Wesley Pryor stood in the middle of the room with his folder full of paper, and he could not say it. Ethan watched him fail to say it. His mouth moved, and the words would not come because the man had spent 5 years telling himself a story about protecting his aunt, and he could not even now cross the last inch into the lie that would have let him keep it. "I'm changing the proxy," Margaret said. That got him. "You can't," Wesley said. "I'm of sound mind. Ask the doctor. Ask Rosa. Ask anyone in this building who's watched me argue about foreign policy for 11 weeks. She turned her head. Ethan, in the drawer, there's a card. The social worker, Diane, her cell's on the back. You can't change the proxy, Wesley said again louder. There's a process. There's paperwork. You need a witness. I need a licensed clinical social worker and 2 people who aren't beneficiaries, Margaret said. I looked it up. I've been a legal secretary for 31 years, Wesley. Did you think I didn't know how to unmake a document? Wesley's composure came apart all at once. After everything I did, his voice climbed toward something ugly. After 5 years of driving out here, of dealing with the bank, of handling every single thing your daughter couldn't be bothered to. She was bothered. Margaret's voice cut across his like a blade. She called 11 times. She left messages on the machine in my house. The machine you had a key to. The machine you told me was empty. Wesley went white. And Ethan, watching him, understood that this was the piece Margaret had been holding back, the piece she had saved, and that she had not saved it for cruelty. She had saved it because she needed to watch his face when she said it to be absolutely sure, and now she was sure, because Wesley Pryor's face when she said the word machine was the face of a man caught, not a man wronged. You erased them, Margaret whispered. You stood in my kitchen, and you erased my daughter's voice, and then you drove out here and told me there was nothing on the machine and I should accept it. I thanked you. I held your hand and I thanked you for checking. I want a lawyer present for any changes to the get out. You're not thinking clearly, you're on medication, and I will contest. Get out of my room. The door opened. Rosa was standing there, and behind her was a security guard from the front, a heavy-set man named Curtis who worked days, and Ethan understood that Rosa had been listening in the hall and had made a decision, and the decision was that Wesley Pryor was leaving now. Sir, Curtis said, I'm going to ask you to come with me. Do you know who I am? I'm her. I know exactly who you are, Rosa said, and there was nothing soft in it. You're a visitor, and the patient has withdrawn your welcome, and I've documented this whole conversation as of about 4 minutes ago, and I'd think very hard about what you say next. Wesley Pryor looked around the room, at Rosa, at Curtis, at Ethan, at Margaret sitting up straight in a bed she was going to die in with more spine in her than the rest of them put together. He picked up his folder. You'll regret this, he said to her, and Margaret Collins laughed. It was not the ugly laugh from the day before. It was almost a real one. Wesley, she said, I'm out of regrets. I used the last one in a driveway 5 years ago. There's nothing left in the account. He left. Curtis walked him out. Rosa stayed in the doorway for a moment, and she and Margaret looked at each other, 2 women who had been careful with each other for 11 weeks, and Rosa said quietly, I'll call Diane. We'll get the proxy sorted today. Same day if I can get her here by 4. Thank you, Margaret said. Rosa left. And then it was just Ethan and Margaret, and the room was very quiet, and Margaret sagged back against the pillows. All at once, the iron gone out of her, an old woman again, exhausted, hollowed out 104 pounds and shaking. That took everything I have, she said. I know. I mean that literally, Ethan. I don't think I have another one of those in me. He took her hand. You don't need another one. It's done. It's not done. She turned her head to look at him. You know it's not done. She hung up on you last night. Ethan's chest went tight. She was in shock. She's had all night to sit with the fact that the man she moved a flight for lied to her from the first hour. Margaret's grip tightened. I know what that feels like from the other side. She's not going to answer your calls today. She might not answer them tomorrow, and I don't have tomorrow to spare Ethan. So you listen to me. Margaret, you don't call her again. She said it with the last of her strength. You go up there. You drive to Seattle and you knock on her door and you don't let her not answer because a phone she can silence and a door she has to open. And if she opens it and throws you down the stairs, then at least she threw a person down the stairs and not a voicemail. She moved her flight to January. She might already be. Then find out, Margaret said. Go now, right now. Don't wait for the proxy paperwork. Rosa can handle it. Don't wait for anything. Her eyes were wet and fierce. I spent 20 years waiting for the easier day. The easier day does not come, Ethan. It has never once come for anyone. Go get my daughter. He stood up. Ethan. He stopped at the door. The letter, Margaret said. Do you still have it? In the car. Good. She closed her eyes. Because I need you to understand something before you go, and I need you to really hear it because you've been carrying that letter for 3 weeks like it's a bomb, and it isn't. It never was. Whatever you're afraid is in that envelope, whatever you think reading it is going to do to her. She opened her eyes. It's just a mother telling her daughter the truth. That's all it is. And nobody in the history of the world ever died of the truth. They only ever died waiting for it. Ethan drove north out of Portland for the second time in 12 days, and this time he did not stop in Centralia, and he did not stop in Tacoma, and his phone sat face up on the passenger seat the whole way, and Claire Collins did not call. He was in Seattle by 1:15. He found the building where she'd said she lived, a brick walk-up in the Central District, and he pressed the buzzer for 3B, and nobody answered, and he pressed it again, and nobody answered, and he stood on the step with the envelope in his jacket, and the sick certainty that she was already gone, that she'd changed her flight back, that he'd broken it, and she'd run the way she ran from everything, the way she photographed things that ran. And he was about to press the buzzer a third time when a voice behind him said, "Stop pressing the buzzer. He turned around. Claire was standing on the sidewalk with a paper coffee cup and eyes that told him she had not slept either. She looked at him for a long moment. "You drove up," she said. "Your mother told me to." "Of course she did." Claire's mouth twisted. "God forbid either of you let me decide something on my own." "That's fair." "Don't agree with me. It's infuriating when you agree with me." They stood there on the sidewalk in the cold. "I've been walking since 6, Claire said. "I walked all the way to the water and back, twice. Do you know what I kept thinking about?" "No." "The 11th phone call." She wrapped both hands around the cup. "I remember the 11th one. It was a Sunday. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say. I was going to say, 'Mom, I don't want to fight. I just want to hear your voice.' And it rang, and the machine picked up, and I hung up before the beep because I couldn't stand to leave it. And I remember standing in a kitchen in Flagstaff thinking, that's it. That's the last one. If she wanted me, she'd have picked up by now." Her voice broke. "And she was in Portland the whole time, wasn't she? She was probably sitting 10 feet from a phone that never rang because a machine in an empty house was eating my voice." Claire. "He took the 11th phone call, Ethan." She was crying now, standing on a public sidewalk with a coffee, not bothering to hide it. "That specific one, the one where I was going to say, 'I just want to hear your voice.' He took that." Ethan took the envelope out of his jacket. He didn't say anything. He just held it out. Claire looked at it. Her name was on the front in blue ink in her mother's careful hand, and she looked at it the way a person looks at something that has been trying to reach them for 5 years across a wall, built by a man in a gray suit. "I can't read it out here," she said. "You don't have to. I can't read it alone." Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "She told you that, didn't she? Don't let her read it alone. That's such a—" She laughed wet and broken. "That's such a her thing to say. Even now, even from a hospice bed. She's still managing me. She's still deciding how I do things. She's still loving you badly," Ethan said. "That's the only way she ever learned how." Claire looked up at him. "You should hate me," Ethan said. "For lying. You should. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you not to, because your whole life people have told you how to feel, and I'm not going to be one more. But she has days, Claire, not weeks anymore. Days. And she signed away the man who took your phone calls this afternoon so that nobody can keep you out of that room. She did that today. She used up almost everything she had left doing it, so that when you walked in, no one could stop you." Claire stood very still. "She's dying," she said. It was not a question. It was a person saying it out loud for the first time, testing whether it was real. "Yes. And you've been sitting with her twice a week." "Since November 2nd. Claire Collins looked down at the envelope in his hand, the letter she couldn't read alone from the mother she'd spent 2 years believing had erased her, and she reached out and she didn't take the letter. She took his wrist. "Then you're coming with me," she said. "Right now. And you're going to be in the room. Because if I have to walk back into my mother's life after 5 years, I am not doing it alone either." They took Claire's car because Ethan's hands were not steady enough to drive, and he knew it, and Claire drove the way she did everything, fast and certain, and a little bit angry, and for the first 40 minutes, neither of them said a word. Somewhere around Olympia, she said, "Tell me about her. What do you want to know?" "I don't know." Her hands tightened on the wheel. "That's the whole problem, isn't it? I don't know anything. I left when I was 24, and I stopped when I was 27, and there are 2 years of a person in there I know nothing about. Tell me what she's like now. Tell me what she does all day in a hospice." "She reads the newspaper," Ethan said. "Front to back. She has opinions about the Marshall Plan." Claire made a sound that was half a laugh and half something else. She used to do the crossword in pen, she said. She said pencil was for cowards. She corrected my history twice in the first hour. She was right both times. That's her, Claire's voice cracked. That's exactly her. God, she's still in there, isn't she? She's not just a sick person in a bed, she's still her. She's more her than anybody I've ever met, Ethan said. She argues with the nurses. She refuses the mask because it makes her fall asleep, and she doesn't want to lose the evening. She counts. She counts everything, Claire. She counted the letters. She counts the days. She's been counting since November whether I was going to give up on her the way she thinks everybody gives up on her eventually. Claire drove for a while. She thinks people give up on her, she said. Yes. That's funny. It was not funny, and she knew it, and she said it anyway in a flat, cracked voice. Because I spent 5 years thinking she gave up on me. We were both sitting on opposite ends of the same lie, thinking we were the one who got left. Ethan looked at the envelope in his lap. She said something before I drove up, he said. She said nobody in the history of the world ever died of the truth. They only ever died waiting for it. Claire's eyes filled, and she blinked them clear because she was doing 70, and there was traffic. How long, she said. Rosa said days. That was this morning. Ethan, how long? I don't know, Claire. Nobody knows. That's the part they don't tell you. They tell you weeks, then they tell you days. And the truth is, it could be tonight, and it could be next Friday, and the not knowing is the thing that... He stopped. Just drive. Please, just drive. She drove. They crossed into Portland at 4:10 in the afternoon, and Ethan's phone rang, and it was Rosa, and Claire said, "Answer it," before he'd even moved. Ethan. Rosa's voice was careful in a way that turned his blood cold. Where are you? We're on the Marquam Bridge. We're 10 minutes out. Rosa, what's happening? She's declined since this morning. It happens fast at the end, faster than the families ever expect. She's awake, she's lucid, but her numbers dropped this afternoon, and Dr. Ferris moved her to comfort care about an hour ago. A pause. Is she with you? She's driving. Then you tell her to drive faster, Rosa said, but you also tell her that whatever she walks into, it's okay. It's okay if it's not the reunion she pictured. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes there aren't enough minutes for the whole thing, and you have to be okay with a piece of it. You tell her that before she walks in, Ethan. Because I've seen people spend the whole visit grieving that it wasn't longer, instead of being inside the minutes they got. Ethan looked at Claire. She heard you, he said. You're on speaker. Silence on the line. Then I'll say it to you directly, Rosa said gently. Claire, honey, your mother has talked about you every single day for 11 weeks. Whatever you're bringing into this building guilt, anger, all of it, you can bring it. She can take it. She's been taking it in one form or another for 5 years. But the one thing I need you to know before you come up here is that she is not going to be angry to see you. She has been waiting. That's all she's been doing. So come up here and let her stop. Claire's face was wet, and she was not wiping it now. Okay, she said. Okay, we're coming. They pulled into the Cedar Hollow lot at 4:22. Claire cut the engine and did not move. I can't, she said. Claire, I've imagined this 1,000 times, and in every single version, I'm angry, I have things to say. I built a case, Ethan. I've been building a case against her for 5 years, and I walked in here to deliver it. And now she's dying, and I can't, all my words are for a fight, and there isn't going to be a fight. Then don't bring the words, Ethan said. Bring you. Just walk in and be her daughter. That's the only thing she's been counting on. Not an apology, not a speech, just you in the door being alive and being hers. Claire looked at him. Stay next to me, she said. I'm not going anywhere. They walked in together. Rosa was at the desk, and she stood up when she saw them, and she looked at Claire for a long moment. This daughter she'd heard about for 3 months and never seen, and something in her face softened and broke at the same time. She's in 14, Rosa said. West Hall all the way to the end. Ethan knows the way. She reached out and touched Claire's arm. Take whatever time you need in the hall. There's no rush in here, but there's also not forever. You'll know the difference. You'll feel it. Claire nodded. She couldn't speak. They walked down the West Hall, and Ethan felt her slowing with every door, and at the last one she stopped completely, one hand flat against the wall, and she stood there breathing like a person about to go underwater. What if she doesn't recognize me? Claire whispered. I've changed. I cut my hair. I have lines now. What if she looks at me and there's a second where she doesn't know? She has a photograph of you under her pillow, Ethan said. "She's had it there the whole time. She knows exactly who's about to walk through that door." Claire closed her eyes. Then she pushed the door open. Margaret Collins was propped up on 2 pillows thinner than she'd been that morning, gray under the eyes and an oxygen line across her cheek, and she was turned toward the door because Rosa had told her, and she had been watching it. And when Claire stepped into the frame of it, Margaret Collins made a sound that was not a word and was every word. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Margaret lifted one hand off the blanket, just barely, just an inch, and said in a voice worn down to almost nothing, "There she is." Claire crossed the room. She didn't say the things she'd built. She didn't deliver the case. She got to the side of the bed and she took her mother's hand in both of hers and she folded over it, her forehead down against her mother's knuckles, and she made a sound Ethan had to look away from, and Margaret put her other hand on her daughter's hair, on the hair she'd said she cut, and she stroked it once, twice, the way you do to a child who's had a bad dream. "You're here," Margaret said. "I'm here. I thought—" Margaret stopped. Started again. "I thought you didn't want me anymore. He told me you didn't want me anymore, and I believed him because I thought I'd earned it." "You didn't earn it." Claire lifted her head. Her face was destroyed. "Mom, you didn't earn it. He lied to both of us. He took the letters and he took the calls and he called me and told me you asked me to stay away. And I believed him too. I believed him for 2 years. I thought you—" Her voice went. "I thought you were finally at peace without me. That's what he said. He said you'd made your peace and I needed to respect it." Margaret Collins closed her eyes. "There was no peace," she said. "There was never one single day of peace. I want you to know that. Whatever else you believe when I'm gone, believe that. I did not have one peaceful day without you. I checked the mail. 5 years I checked the mail like a fool waiting for a letter I didn't know he'd already—" She stopped. "It doesn't matter now. You're here. He took 5 years and he doesn't get this. This is ours." Claire pressed her mother's hand to her cheek. "I called 11 times, she said. "The 11th one, Mom, I was going to say, I just want to hear your voice. I hung up before the beep. I've thought about that phone call every day for 5 years. I never got to be angry at that machine," Margaret said, "because I never knew it was eating you. Oh, my girl, all the anger we spent, all of it, on each other. When there was a man in a gray suit standing between us the whole time, and we never even looked at him." Ethan stood by the door and did not move and did not breathe, and Margaret's eyes came up and found him over her daughter's shoulder. "You kept your promise," she said, "not the way you asked me to." His voice was rough. "It took me 22 days, Margaret. I should have the first night I should have—" "Stop!" Margaret's voice even now had the edge that shut a room up. "You did the exact thing I did, and then you did the thing I never managed, which is, you stopped doing it in time. 22 days. I took 20 years, Ethan. You're 20 years ahead of me. Don't you dare stand in my doorway apologizing for being faster than a dying woman." Claire turned and looked at him, and for the first time since the sidewalk in Seattle, there was no anger in it at all. "He drove up twice," Claire said to her mother, still looking at Ethan. "In 12 days. He drove up to Seattle and he lied to me and I hated him for it for about 11 hours, and then I walked to the water and back twice and realized he lied to me the exact way you love me, badly, and for the right reasons, and too much." Margaret almost smiled. "He has that problem," she said. "It's why I picked him." "You picked him." "I picked him the first Thursday. I knew what I was doing." Margaret's eyes moved between them, her daughter and the volunteer, and something crossed her face that was almost the old sharpness, almost a spark of the woman who did the crossword in pen. "I'm dying, Claire, not stupid. I saw it before either of you did. I've been watching you two through a phone I wasn't even on." Claire flushed. Ethan looked at the floor. "Don't," Claire said. "I'll say what I want," Margaret said. "I'm running low on chances to embarrass you, and I intend to use them all." Then the almost smile faded, and she looked at the envelope still in Ethan's hand. "You brought it." The room went quiet. Ethan came forward and set the envelope on the blanket between Margaret's hand and Claire's, and none of them touched it for a moment. "You should read it," Margaret said. "Now?" Claire's voice was thin. "Mom, I don't want to read a letter. I have you. You're right here. Why would I read a letter when we can just talk, we have time, We don't have as much time as you want us to have," Margaret said gently. "And there are things in there I wrote when I was braver than I am right now. There are things I said on paper that I don't have the strength to say out loud anymore, and I want you to have them in my handwriting in my real voice, not this. She gestured at her own throat, the worn-down thread of what was left. "Not this. Read it. I'll be right here. That's the whole point. That's the thing I asked him." "Don't let her read it alone. And you're not going to. I'm right here." Claire's hands were shaking. "I can't read it with you watching me." "Then have him read it," Margaret said. Both of them looked at Ethan. "Margaret." "You've carried it 3 weeks," Margaret said. "You know it's the one honest thing I made in 5 years. Read it to my daughter. Let me hear it out loud one time before I go. I never got to. I wrote it 40 times and I never once heard it in the air." Ethan picked up the envelope. His hands were not steady. He looked at Claire, and Claire looked back at him terrified, and she gave him one small nod, and she took her mother's hand, and Ethan slid the 4 folded pages out of the envelope that Wesley Pryor had torn in half, and Margaret had refused to let die. He unfolded them. He read. He read a mother telling her daughter that she had been 9 years old, holding a garden hose when the man she loved died in the driveway, and that some part of her had never once put the hose down, had stood in that driveway for 20 years, with water running, trying to put out a fire that had already taken everything. He read a mother admitting that she had confused fear with love for 2 decades, that she had held on so hard because letting go had killed her once already, and she could not survive it twice, and that in holding on that hard, she had made the exact thing happen that she was trying to prevent. He read a woman apologizing, not explaining, not defending, just apologizing for the curfews and the phone calls to roommates, and the crying at the kitchen table until a magazine job in New Mexico turned to dust. And Claire cried, but she did not look away, and Margaret watched her daughter's face the whole time with an expression Ethan had no word for a woman hearing her own truest thing come back to her in another person's voice in the air. Finally, after 40 drafts and 5 years, and one man in a gray suit who had almost buried it. And then Ethan came to the last part, and his voice caught, and he almost couldn't. "Go see the world," he read. "Take every opportunity you were ever afraid to take, especially the ones I made you afraid of. Do not spend 1 more hour of your life standing beside my memory, the way I spent 20 standing beside your father's. The worst thing I ever did was let his death teach me to hold on. Do not let mine teach you the same. The greatest gift you could ever give me, the only one I want, is to become the woman I always knew you were, the one I was too frightened to let you be. Go be her. And know that every single day you're being her somewhere. Wherever you are, your mother is not gone. Your mother is finally at peace for real this time, because she got to stop being afraid." The room was silent. Ethan set the pages down. Claire was folded over her mother's hand again, and Margaret was stroking her hair, and neither of them spoke for a long time, and Ethan stepped back toward the door to give them the thing that belonged to only them. "Don't go far," Margaret said without opening her eyes. "I'm right here," Ethan said. Margaret lay with her hand in her daughter's hair, and after a while she said in the thread of a voice, "I'm still your mother, even now, even after everything. Am I still? You're still my mother," Claire said. "I'm sorry I loved you like a person who'd already lost you. I know. I'm sorry I said you'd regret it. In the driveway. That's not what I meant. I meant please don't go. I've never in my whole life been able to say the second one, and I'm saying it now 5 years too late. I'm saying please don't go, and I know you can't stay. I know it's me who has to go, but I wanted to say the right sentence one time before Mom. Before I couldn't." "I'm not going anywhere," Claire said. "Do you hear me? I moved my flight. I'm not going to Copenhagen in December. I'm staying. I'm right here. You don't have to say please don't go because I'm not going. I'm staying right here with you for as long as—" "No." Margaret's eyes opened. "No, you listen to me. You are going to Copenhagen." "Mom, you are going to Copenhagen, and you are going to take that residency, and you are going to make the best work of your life, and you are not going to sit in Portland guarding my grave. That's an order. That's a mother's order, and you never once in your life managed to disobey one, so don't start now that it counts." Her voice was fierce and failing at the same time. "The letter says it. Everything in the letter is real. Go be her. That's how you keep me. Not by staying, by going. Do you understand me? The only way you lose me is if you stop living to sit next to where I was." Claire was crying too hard to answer. "Say you'll go," Margaret said. "I'll go. Say it like you mean it. I taught you not to lie to me." "I'll go," Claire said. I'll go, Mom. I'll go to Copenhagen and I'll make the best work of my life and I'll be her. I promise. I promise. Margaret Collins closed her eyes and something went out of her shoulders, some weight she'd been carrying since a driveway 5 years ago, since a driveway 20 years ago, since a screen door and a garden hose. Good, she said. That's the one. That's the letter I couldn't send. I got to hear you say it. That's more than I... She stopped. Her breathing had changed. That's more than I ever thought I'd get. Rosa came in quietly at some point, checked the numbers, adjusted something, and stepped back out, and she caught Ethan's eye on the way and gave him a small nod that told him what the nod told him. Margaret slept for a while. Claire did not let go of her hand. And around 8 that evening, Margaret woke up again, clearer than she'd been all day, the way Rosa had said sometimes happens near the end. A gift and a warning both, and she looked at her daughter, and then she looked at Ethan standing by the window, and she said, "Come here, both of you, where I can see you together." They came and stood beside the bed. Margaret looked at them for a long moment. Her daughter, and the man who'd kept the promise, and whatever she saw seemed to satisfy something in her, seemed to close a book she'd been holding open with both hands. "I don't get to see how this turns out," she said. "The two of you. I know how it turns out. I've known since the first Thursday, but I don't get to see it. That's the only thing I'm angry about. Not the dying, just that." "Margaret," Ethan started. "Don't tell me I'm wrong." Her eyes glinted the old spark one more time. "You drove to Seattle twice in 12 days for a woman you met at a photography show. I've been a legal secretary for 31 years. I know what the evidence says." Claire laughed through her tears, a wet, cracked, helpless sound. "Mom, take care of each other," Margaret said. "That's the whole thing. That's all any of it was ever about. I got it wrong for 20 years, and I finally got it right at the very end. Love isn't holding on. It's trusting them enough to let them face it." She looked at Ethan. "You knew that already. It's why you couldn't give her the letter. You didn't want her to face it alone. But she wasn't alone, Ethan. She had you. She had you the whole time. You just couldn't see it because you were so busy being afraid, same as me." Ethan couldn't speak. "Sit down," Margaret said. "Both of you. Stay a while. I'm tired, but I don't want to close my eyes yet. I waited 5 years to have you both in a room. Let me have the room a little longer." So they sat. And Margaret Collins, who had done the crossword in pen, who had refused the mask so she wouldn't lose the evening, who had counted every letter and every day lay in her bed with her daughter's hand in hers and a good man in the chair by the window, and she did not close her eyes yet. She had the room. For the first time in 5 years, she had the whole room. Margaret Collins passed away at 4:17 in the morning 2 days later with her daughter's hand in hers, and a man she'd met 11 weeks earlier sitting in the chair by the window where she'd told him to stay. Claire never left. Those 2 days, she never once left the room. She slept in the chair. She ate what Rosa brought her and didn't taste it. She read her mother the newspaper front to back on the last full morning, and when she got to a piece about foreign policy, Margaret roused enough to say in a voice like paper, "That's wrong." And Claire wrote it down, the last thing her mother ever corrected, and she kept that scrap of paper for the rest of her life. At the very end, it was quiet. There was no speech. There was no final wisdom. There was just a woman who had spent 5 years counting finally stopping, and a daughter who had come home in time, which is the only thing that matters, and the only thing nobody has ever promised. Ethan was the one who noticed the breathing change. He'd sat with enough people to know. He touched Claire's shoulder, and she woke, and she understood, and she didn't scream or sob. She just leaned close and put her mouth near her mother's ear and said, "I'm here, Mom. I'm here. You can go. I'm not alone. He's here. You did it. You can stop being afraid now." And Margaret stopped being afraid. Rosa came in at 4:20 and confirmed what they already knew, and she put a hand on Claire's back and one on Ethan's shoulder, and she said the thing she'd said to 1,000 families and somehow made it sound like she'd never said it before. "She waited for you," Rosa said. "They do that more than people believe. They hold on for the door to open. She held on 11 weeks, honey. She held on for you." Claire didn't cry until they were in the parking lot, and then she cried the way a person cries when the thing they were bracing for finally lands all at once. No bottom to it. And Ethan held her in a hospice parking lot at 4:40 in the morning and did not say one word because there were no words, because he had learned 2 years ago that the words are not the point. The staying is the point. He stayed. The funeral was small. Wesley Pryor did not come, which surprised no one. He had contested the proxy change through a lawyer for exactly 4 days until that lawyer read Rosa's contemporaneous notes and reviewed the facility's documentation and quietly advised his client that pursuing this further would invite questions about certified mail-wiped answering machines and a 2-year-old phone call questions. Wesley very much did not want a court to ask. He dropped it. He kept his distance. And when the will was read, and it turned out Margaret had 3 days before she died with Diane, the social worker, and 2 nurses as witnesses, left everything to her daughter, and pointedly, specifically in writing, nothing to her nephew Wesley Pryor, sent exactly 1 email which said the whole family was going to remember how they'd treated him, and to which Claire never replied. She read that email once and deleted it, and never spoke his name again. "He built a wall out of nothing," she told Ethan weeks later. "Silence. That's all he used. He didn't have to do anything but not deliver, and it almost worked. 5 years, Ethan. It almost cost us everything, and all he did was nothing." "That's how it usually works," Ethan said. "Nobody ever needs a villain who does something. They just need one who's willing to let the wrong thing stand." Claire went to the old house after the funeral. She hadn't been inside in 5 years and 4 months. She walked through rooms she'd grown up in, past a kitchen where her mother had once cried until a job in New Mexico turned to dust, and she found the answering machine still sitting on the little table in the hall, unplugged now, its cord wrapped around it, and she stood there holding it for a long time. "There's nothing on it," she told Ethan on the phone. "He wiped it clean. Whatever I said, it's gone. The 11th call, all of them. Gone." "I'm sorry." "No, that's not—" She stopped. "I thought I'd feel worse. I thought finding it empty would break me. But it's just a machine, Ethan. My mother's not in a machine. My mother's in the letter, and the letter I have." He couldn't wipe the letter. She rewrote it 40 times specifically so that it would survive him, even though she didn't know it was him she was surviving. She just knew she had to make one thing that couldn't be taken. "She numbered everything," Ethan said. "She built things to last." "She built me to last," Claire said. "That's the part I'm only understanding now. All that holding on, all that fear. Underneath it, she was trying to make something that wouldn't break when she was gone. She just did it the wrong way for 20 years. And then she did it right in the last month of her life, and I got to be there for the right part. Not everybody gets that. I keep thinking about that. Not everybody gets the right part." She found the journal, too, the brown one with the rubber band. Rosa had put it in the bag of Margaret's things, and inside the back cover behind the photograph were the carbon copies. 61 letters. 5 years of a mother reaching month after month into what she thought was silence. Claire read all 61. It took her 3 weeks. She read 1 a day, sometimes 2, and some days she couldn't read any, and Ethan drove up on the weekends and sat with her while she did it, because she asked him to, because she'd learned from her mother's letter that the reading is not supposed to be done alone. "Listen to this one," she said one night, number 34, holding the carbon up to the lamp. "She's telling me about a bird that built a nest on the porch. 3 paragraphs about a bird. She wrote me 3 paragraphs about a bird because she didn't know what else to say, and she just wanted to keep talking to me. She'd run out of apologies and she was down to birds, and I never—" Her voice broke. "I never got the bird. Ethan, I never got the bird." "You have it now." "I have it now," Claire said, and pressed the carbon to her chest. 2 years late. But I have the bird." She went to Copenhagen. She almost didn't. In January, with the flight looming, she sat in the old house with the estate half settled and every reason in the world to stay, and she called Ethan and said, "I can't do it. I can't get on a plane 3 weeks after burying her. It feels like abandoning her all over again. It feels like the driveway in reverse." And Ethan, who could have said stay, who wanted to say stay, who had spent 2 months falling the rest of the way in love with a woman he'd met at a photography show, said the hardest true thing instead. "She gave you an order," he said. "The last order she ever gave you. Go be her. You said you would. You promised her in that room I was standing right there. And I'm not going to be one more person who loves you badly enough to hold you here. Get on the plane, Claire. Be her. That's how you keep her. She told you herself." There was a long silence on the line. "You're really telling me to go," she said. "I'm really telling you to go." "Even though—" She stopped. "You know what this is, between us. You know what it is." "I know exactly what it is," Ethan said. "That's why I'm telling you to go, because your mother spent 20 years proving that if you love someone by holding on, you lose them. And I'm not going to make her whole life the cautionary tale and then do the exact thing she warned us about. Go to Copenhagen. 2 years. I'll be here. Portland doesn't move. I don't move. If it's real, it survives a plane ticket. If it doesn't survive a plane ticket, it wasn't the thing anyway. Claire went to Copenhagen. She made the best work of her life. She'd spent 5 years photographing empty places, things left behind, the last resident mowing a lawn on a street with no other houses. And in Copenhagen, something turned over in her, and she started photographing people, living ones. She did a series on the elderly residents of a care home on the edge of the city, and she titled it in English in the catalog, The Room a Little Longer. And every single portrait was of a person who was still unmistakably, completely themselves, no matter how thin the thread had gotten. Critics called it her breakthrough. One of them, and Claire laughed until she cried when she read it, called it a commentary on capitalism. It was about her mother. It was always about her mother. And Ethan waited. He didn't wait the way Margaret had waited in the dark, checking a mailbox, letting fear turn into a life. He waited the way you're supposed to out loud, with a full life of his own running alongside it. He kept teaching. He kept his Sundays at Cedar Hollow. And he and Claire talked across 9 time zones nearly every day, and she flew home twice a year, and he flew to Copenhagen once, and it did survive the plane ticket because it was the thing after all. But before any of that, in those first weeks after the funeral, something else happened. And it was the thing Margaret would have wanted more than the romance, more than anything. It started with a question Rosa asked, standing in the hall at Cedar Hollow weeks after Margaret was gone. "Do you know how many people die in here with something unsaid?" Rosa said. "I've done this 9 years. It's almost all of them, Ethan. Not the big dramatic secrets, just the ordinary things. I love you. I forgive you. I'm sorry. I was proud of you the whole time and I never said it. They wait too long, or they're scared, or somebody like Wesley gets in the way. And then it's 4 in the morning and it's too late, and the family spends the rest of their lives building a case against a person who can't answer anymore." Ethan thought about it for a long time. Then he called Claire in Copenhagen. "I want to build something," he said, "for your mother. Not a bench, not a plaque. Something that does the thing she couldn't do." They called it the Margaret Collins Project, and it was almost embarrassingly simple, which is why it worked. It was a small program run out of Cedar Hollow at first, and then out of 4 hospices, and then out of 40, where a volunteer would sit with any patient who wanted it and help them record a message, a letter, a voice recording, a video if they had the strength, whatever they had left to say to whoever they needed to say it to. And the program held that message safely, outside the reach of any Wesley Pryor, and delivered it guaranteed certified witnessed after the person was gone. No middleman, no folder, no nephew in a gray suit deciding what somebody could handle. The whole point was that no one would ever again have to wonder whether the letter had been sent. Claire designed the thing that held the messages. She'd spent 5 years understanding how a voice could be eaten by an empty machine, and she made sure it could never happen inside the project that carried her mother's name. Every message got a number. Every message got a witness. She insisted on it. "My mother numbered things," she told the first group of volunteers standing in a room at Cedar Hollow, where she'd sat 2 days at her mother's side. She was a legal secretary for 31 years. She knew that the only way to make sure the truth survives is to make it impossible to lose. "So we number everything. Nothing in this program disappears. Nothing gets torn in half. That's the whole promise." La. The first message the project ever delivered was from a man named Harold, 81, to a son he hadn't spoken to in 9 years over an argument neither of them could quite remember the shape of anymore. The son came to Cedar Hollow to collect it in person, a hard-faced man of 50 who clearly hadn't wanted to come, and Ethan sat with him while he listened to his father's voice for the first time in nearly a decade, and watched a grown man come apart in a folding chair over 3 minutes of a dead man saying he was sorry, and he'd always been proud, and he should have called. 9 years, the son said afterward, wiping his face, furious and wrecked. 9 years I thought he was still angry. He wasn't angry. He was just as stubborn as me, and we both ran out of time being stubborn. "That's the thing about unfinished conversations," Ethan said. "They're never as finished as we tell ourselves. We just stop having them." He thought about Margaret when he said it. He thought about Margaret every time. 2 years later, Claire came home from Copenhagen. She came home for good with a body of work that had made her name and a residency behind her, and every one of those opportunities her mother had begged her in a letter written 40 times to finally take. She'd taken them, all of them. The ones she'd been afraid of, the ones Margaret had made her afraid of. She'd become the woman in the letter, the one Margaret always knew she could be. And she came home, not because she was running back to a grave, but because the person she wanted to build the rest of her life next to was in Portland, teaching history to teenagers, and sitting with dying people on Sundays, and running a project named after her mother. Ethan met her at the airport. She came through the doors with a camera around her neck and set down her bags and looked at him. And he looked at her, and for a second neither of them said anything, and then Claire Collins said the thing that closed the circle. "I read her the airport once," she said. "The last morning, front to back. There was a piece about foreign policy, and she said it was wrong and I wrote it down. I still have the scrap." Her eyes filled. "I keep it in the back of the journal, behind the photograph, where she kept mine." Ethan pulled her in. They were married this next fall in the garden at Cedar Hollow, the one that floods every February on a day it didn't flood with Rosa standing up as a witness, because there was no one else living who had been there for the whole of it. No one else who'd watched the door open at 4:22 on that afternoon and known what it meant. They didn't have a lot of family in the chairs. Claire's father was gone. Her mother was gone. But there was a photograph on an empty seat in the front row, a woman of 68 with short white hair. She still combed herself and reading glasses on the end of her nose. And no one who mattered thought it was strange, because everyone who mattered understood that Margaret Collins was the reason any of them were in that garden at all. At the reception, someone asked the question. Someone always asked the question at every party for the rest of their lives, because it's the first thing anybody asks a couple. "So how did you two meet?" And Ethan Walker, high school history teacher, 36 years old. Now, husband told the truth. He always told the truth. It was the only version worth telling. "A dying woman handed me a letter for her daughter," he said. "She'd carried it for years. She was surrounded by people who'd let it disappear, and she trusted a stranger with the last true thing she had left to say. And she asked me for one promise." "What promise?" "Don't let her read it alone." He looked across the garden at Claire, who was laughing at something, camera in her hand, alive and hers and free, the way her mother had begged her to be, and he felt the door in his chest, the one that had stayed locked for 11 years over a turkey sandwich, and 40 minutes and a father who died without him, and he felt it finally all the way open. "I kept that promise," he said. "I didn't let her read it alone. And somewhere in the keeping of it, I stopped being a man who arrived 40 minutes too late. Because I finally arrived on time for someone, and she became the person I was meant to spend my life with. Because in the end, Margaret Collins had been wrong about one thing and right about everything else. She'd spent 20 years believing that if you loved someone, you protected them from the pain, and she'd learned in the last month of her life in a bed she died in that love is the opposite of that. Love is trusting someone enough to let them face it. She'd said it to Ethan and she'd said it to Claire, and it had rearranged both of their lives. But the thing she'd been right about, the thing that outlived her and traveled to 40 hospices and delivered thousands of messages and never once let a single one disappear, was simpler than any of it. An unfinished conversation is still worth having. It is always, always still worth having. It is worth having at 4 in the morning. It is worth having across 5 years and 3 states and a wall built out of nothing but silence. It is worth having even when you're certain it's too late, because it is almost never as late as the people who profit from your silence want you to believe. Margaret Collins waited too long and then she didn't. She was afraid for 20 years and then for 1 month she wasn't. And in that 1 month she reached across everything that had been done to keep her quiet, and she said the true thing, and she made sure it couldn't be torn in half, and she handed it to a stranger with an honest face and one instruction. He kept the promise. And that is why on any given evening in some quiet room in some hospice in some city, a volunteer is sitting beside someone who is running out of time, holding a recorder and a witness form and a numbered envelope, helping them say the thing they've been too afraid to say, so that no daughter ever again has to spend 5 years believing her mother let her go. That is Margaret's real letter, not the 4 pages in Claire's journal. The promise itself kept and kept and kept again forever by everyone who ever learned her name.